Hello, everyone, and welcome to Learning to Code Episode 1. Before we dive in, I want to go over a few things to sort of set the stage on where I want to go with this. This course will initially be geared towards the very basics. The total beginners will be at home here. However, the plan isn't to stay as beginners. Each episode will build on the last and become more advanced to where even an experienced developer, with several years of experience maybe, might find some guidance or spy a nugget of wisdom they didn't know before. I'm still a budding dev myself, but I've been doing this for a bit over a decade now, and I know some things. Enough things to want to record them in video format so that I and hopefully someone else out there can benefit from them too. My programming language of choice for this series is Ruby, an object-oriented language with tons of cool syntax hidden away to speed things up as your projects and aspirations grow larger. I suppose what I mean is that at such a high level of a language that Ruby is, you tend to also have a lot of control over the really low-level code, like one might see in Rust. Rust is a systems language I've been fangirling over the last few years, and as it turns out, I'm not the only one, apparently. The 4.0 Ruby compiler is now written in Rust. I won't just be teaching Ruby. Rust may be used as much as any other language. I find it very, very interesting, and when I understand it more, I would love to teach it. But today is Ruby. Anyway, enough introductions. Welcome in. Let's get going. So you want to learn to code, but where do you start? You may hear about how one of several programming languages is the one to know that everyone is hiring for. That may be true right now, but in 6 months, or a year, 5, you need to learn how to code, not memorize a language. There will always be another piece of technology to learn, but besides the flow of technology, it's simply a good idea to broaden your knowledge of different languages. So don't learn just one language and call it quits. Understand why all these languages exist and need to exist in this way. They all have their strengths, and understanding each piece of the technology puzzle will only strengthen what you know. So where do you start? Well, you need to go to download the language and a way to edit the files. For the language, you just go to, for Windows, it's rubyinstaller.org. All of this will be in the description. Download the one that's carried out, Ruby plus DevKit 4.0.6. This is what we'll be programming on today. You just click that once and it starts the download. I'm on Firefox, so this is the way it looks. As for how to edit the files, you can use Notepad. It's completely free. It sucks, but it is free and you can use it. You could just write in the terminal if you want. I use RubyMine. For learning, it's free. So I see no reason why you shouldn't take advantage of such a great piece of software that works natively with Ruby in the first place. It's got a lot of cool functionalities. This isn't a video about RubyMine, so I'm not going to dive into that. I'm not being sponsored. I just find their IDE very easy to use, and it's free for learning. But you can download VS Code or Sublime Text or Atom. There's so many different editors you can try. Just figure out what works for you, I guess. The editor of my choice will be RubyMine, as you can see here. RubyMine also works really well with other languages, not just Ruby. So you can change the interpreter to check for different code, like Rust, for example. Now follow through with installing the Ruby language library for your PC or Mac, or whatever setup you have. I think now is a good time to say do comment down below if you have any questions, or if I'm unclear on something, I'll do my best to answer as many as I can. Links to RubyMine, once again, links to RubyMine and the Ruby language downloads will be in the video description. So once you've got everything downloaded, open up your text editor. I've got RubyMine open, so you would go up to the top left and just hit New Project. And then you're going to have to choose a name for your project, where you want to save your code, and then the interpreter, which is the Ruby language that we downloaded just a minute ago. It's not going to show here for you first, most likely, but you can see the address where it's saved on mine, ruby40x64 bin ruby.exe. You just hit this plus button and you navigate to where the ruby.exe file is installed on your system. Once that's all set, you hit create. This window does a bit of default language properties for you, and you've got 3 blank windows. Right click the root folder, go new, ruby class/file. It really doesn't matter which of these you choose as long as it's not module, because that'll just confuse you. Class and file really aren't any different. We're going to go with class, just so we can play around. Name it whatever. Add a .rb to represent it. Actually, do I need an RB? Oh, see, because I'm entering a class, classes need to be capitalized. So that was part of the requirement for saving this file. It is good practice to name your files, your class names the same. It's just better reading. So we're going to do that. So tutorial, class, enter. So you can see they just gave us a file, frozen string literal true. Don't worry too much about it. Keep it, but for now, just don't worry about it. And then class tutorial end. Now you've come very far. You've got the language downloaded. You've got the IDE downloaded, or whatever your text editor of choice is. You've got a little bit of code on your screen. Nothing's happened yet. Let's change that. So press enter when if you put your cursor here after tutorial, and put a space in between the class tutorial and end, and just type in puts and then single quotes, hello world. And up in the top right, you'll see it says current file. So this file will run if you press this green arrow right here, it'll run this file, and it'll give us a little bit of output in the terminal. So there we go. Hello world. You can change this to anything that you want. Wow. See? Congratulations. You have officially made your first program. So now you've got a program that prints out hello world. Let's make it do something else. Instead of going into math class and explaining what class tutorial means and why there's an ends, let's make it print out something else. You can change this to anything. Make it a 2. Make it literally just a 2, no quotes. And run that. You get 2. You can even do a bit of arithmetic. 2 plus 2. What does that equal? Turns out it equals 4. Let's instantiate some variables. So at integer equals 99. So the at sign says this is a class level variable, and we're saying that it carries the number 99. So if we print out integer, we will get 99. See that down there? Now if we try to print integer out here, it's not going to work. See, it's only using the one that's in here. I can comment out this one just to be sure. But if I play this again, see, the number 99 went away. Because it is a class variable inside of this object, and outside we can't access this. We can if you make a new object. You can instantiate an object. So if we do tutorial equals tutorial.new, now this is still not going to work, because if we put what we want to do is reference integer inside of tutorial. So if I say puts tutorial dot integer, for example, if you're calling something that's in the class, this is integer, you're calling it by using the dot notation. So tutorial dot integer. We've got Rubocop giving me little squiggly errors because I don't have a new line down here. Feel free to disable that if you don't care. It's a little annoying, but I'm getting used to it. I'm getting this error here. Puts tutorial.integer. So tutorial is one of these. This is your object, your class, and these are your variables. This is your program. This is where you're running it. So tutorial, whatever you can name, you can make this anything. Anything. We're gonna name it test. And I'm gonna change this down here to test. Test.integer. So we want to put out print out test.integer. What happens? We get an error for an instance of tutorial. Undefined method integer. Delete that. So you want to access and say a variable that is inside of tutorial. All you have to do in Ruby is you type attribute. You can do reader, writer, or accessor. Reader means that we can check the integer, but we can't change the integer. Accessor means we can see it and we can change it. And writer is we can only change it. We can't see it. I'm not exactly sure when that would be useful. But we're going to do attribute accessor followed by a list of what are known as symbols. So you're just going to type an integer, colon integer. We'll come back to this. Each time we add a new variable, we want accessible outside of the class itself. We have to add it to this attribute accessor list. Now, this is a little magic keyword that sets up what are known as getters and setters. So you can just type in something like define get integer and then return integer. That's a getter. So all you're getting is this variable to come back out. But you're also going to have to write set integer. You know, you don't want to write all that. This is actually automatically written as soon as you type in this attribute accessor line. And then give a list of symbols, which is a variable type. 99 is a variable type. It is of type integer. And this is the type of symbol. So let's test our program new. Now. Nothing. Now, every class has a setup method that is called each time you create that class. So in our case, well, let's keep variables there. You define initialize. Def and end are also keywords, just like class is. You can't use them as your own variables, but you use them as the tools in the language. So in this case, you're defining initialize, which is in other languages called, constructors. You called tutorial.new, and that calls initialize in your tutorial class. So we're going to put all of the initial variables for this object inside of that initialize block. Now we're going to play. 99. There it is. Every time you call tutorial.new, it calls the initialize method on the object that you are trying to instantiate. .new just means you are creating a new object of type tutorial, and you're storing it in a variable named test. A minute ago, we had an issue where the integer was not being printed out on the terminal when we tried to press go on our file. The reason for that was because we didn't have the variable inside of the initialize method. This makes sure that when you create tutorial and it passes it to test, that it's correctly finished setting itself up before moving on to the next line of code, puts test.integer. Let's make a few more variables so you get an idea for how this is supposed to work. You can create something called a float, which is a series of numbers after the point that is not cut off. So integers are only one, whole numbers. Floats can be fractions, they can be anything. If you want this to be an actual fraction, you would have to end it with an R, or else it would automatically chop off the 0.75 when you try to print it, because a float is the whole purpose of a float is to have that remainder, that 0.75. And if you want it to show up as 6 3/4, you can just type out, so we can add float, comma, float. We had float to our attribute accessor list. We have float here. Press play. Oh, right. Puts test.float. There we go. 27/4. Because it's 6.75 over R rational. So if we just did 0.75, 3/4. 0.75 R, not there. 0.75. 0.75 will give you an error. You have to have the 0 or 1. 1 3/4, also known as 7/4, or 1.75 R, 7/4. Let's add another variable. We already talked about the symbol. Symbols are basically just pieces of text with a colon in front of them, and think of them like, a symbol. It means something. So you can, in the attribute accessor up here, you're using symbols to access these here variables. You can't access these variables until you set them up as symbols in the attribute accessor class, or set up getters and setters yourself. So these are taking symbols, and these can be translated into anything else. It doesn't have to say stay afloat. It could float is a piece of text, a word. Symbols can mean a bunch of different things. Um, it's just another way of indicating something with meaning. So we're going to do @array. Not we're skipping the second A because array is a reserved. Is it reserved? Looks like it's okay. You use brackets when you're setting up an array. An array is a sequence of data. It could be anything. So inside of this one variable called array, we have 4 integers, we have a string of text called 5, and we have a symbol called 4. All of this information is carried on inside of this specific variable. And you can type something like @array. Well, if you have the array, array, and then you put in brackets what number you want to access. So array 0 gives you 0. Array 4 is going to give you the 5 string. Now, why is it giving you the 5th location if you just put in 4? Why is it giving you the 5th thing in the list? That's because arrays start at 0. So the first index is 0. Then it's 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5. So I can add, let's add symbol, and array puts test.symbol, puts test.array. Let's print that out. Run that. See, we got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then 4, which was translated into text automatically using the puts method. If you want to print integer inside of some fancy piece of text, you could say puts, we're going to leave test.integer there. We're going to surround it in brackets, actually curly braces, and double quotes. Double quotes allow you to do string interpolation. So we can type in text here, the integer is test.integer. Now if we run this, you got the integer is 99. If you don't have this hashtag curly braces, then test.integer just gets turned into a string and it does nothing. See, test.integer. We don't want that. We want string interpolation. All right, moving on to the next variable. This is a hash. Hashes are defined with curly braces, like this. Foo bar, comma, baz4. That is the syntax. So a hash is a dictionary. You look up a keyword, you get something back. In this case, the keys are baz and foo. And what they get back is bar and 4. So if I print out, let me just quickly add test hash to our attribute accessor list. Puts test.test hash foo. We should get bar. Okay. And as you can see with the miracles of AI, I didn't need to go to Google to research exactly which syntax I was messing up. I just asked it a nice question. GitHub Copilot is free. Each month, I think you get like, I don't know what they call them, like tokens, 50 tokens. But anyway, you get to use this nice little helper AI to help write code and understand code and learn it and really get used to it. I wouldn't rely on it entirely because you'll need to know what it's generating, what code it's generating, and how to edit it. A, if there's a bug. B, just to make sure it's not running something malicious. C, because you should just know you're going to read code in the future and it probably isn't going to be written by you. So you need to know how this language is written. And sometimes it could be a little complicated. In this case, I thought it was a parentheses. It is actually a square brackets, which I thought was only for arrays, but they're actually for hashes. Now, and a difference between an array, which is this 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and this hash, which is the curly braces. The curly braces and the brackets, that's not the only difference. The difference in this is hashes don't have a specific size. They don't have specific indexes. Arrays are great if you know exactly how many things you need to store in that array. If you need to add more things to an array, you can do that. It's perfectly fine to reassign things in an array or add additional things. And Ruby has some optimizations built in where it will expand your array size a little bit more than you want it to, just to future-proof it. If you try to access one of these, so if we do test or test.array, we'll do 3. Let's do 3, 4, 5. Let's do 5. That'll give us 6, I think. 6. There it is. Now, why did we get 6? Well, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. 6. That's how we got 6. What happens if we access something outside of the array, like 6? No more 6. It just didn't print it. That was a very elegant way for Ruby to be like, hey, you did the wrong thing, but it's okay. We're not going to crash on you. We're just not going to print out that line. Usually, the programs will crash. The last method, the last variable that I want to go over is string. We're just going to do str, to make sure we're not stepping on anybody's toes. Houses are cool. Period. Strings are sentences, words. Anything inside of single quotes or double quotes. And if we want to print it out, oh, hold on. We have to add it to the attribute accessor. String. Test.string. Play. Houses are cool. So you can add anything in here. Wowzers are cool. You know what's even crazier? We can top off this lesson with something interesting. You can write puts. We're gonna put in a little program into these variables so that you can actually see something come back to you. We're gonna say contents equals an empty string, or actually just contents equals get dot chomp. And then contents I'm gonna say puts you typed contents. This is just so you know that it's waiting. Let's play that. So if you look down here in the terminal, it's waiting for you to type something. So type something. Typing. Wow. I'm doing a thing. You typing. Wow, I'm doing a thing. So that's user input. We just stored something that you typed in the terminal into a variable, just like these. These are also variables. This is a variable. You saved it, and then you printed it out in string interpolation right here. All right, folks, I think I'm going to wrap it up here. We covered variables, many different types of variables. We figured out how to access those variables from outside of the class. So far we just printed that information to the screen, but in our next lesson we're going to be going a lot further in understanding why all of these different variables are even important. We also got a little bit of user input and just some string interpolation. And now you understand a little bit about how there are keywords that are reserved by the language. Like, comment, subscribe. If you've got any questions, type them down below and I'll give them an answer. Thanks for watching, especially if you got this far. I appreciate it. Bye.